What's going on? In this video, we're going to be talking about Material UI buttons. In this video section specifically, we're going to be talking about contained buttons. So what you want to do is download or install a typical React application. If you already have one working, that's fine. Let's pop open the package.json file. All you really need to care about, and feel free to pause this too, is that our React and Material UI versions line up. If yours is higher than 16 dot whatever or 4 dot whatever, say it's 17 and 5, then you may want to look for a different source because odds are there are breaking changes that have occurred. But if yours is 16.48 and your Material UI install is 4.99, everything should be fine. But I just figured it'd be fair to show you that at the beginning. So as we can see here, after you do an install of React, this is what your app.js file looks like. Standard, we're going to delete most of it, but the good thing is this is the only file we're working in today, so there's going to be no hopping around of files. So we're going to go below here, and we're going to end up starting it, and we're going to see that Edge pops up here. And give it a second. Hey, there we go. Alright, awesome. So now that we have this application running, we're going to gut it. Awesome. We're not going to have a lot of code in this video, but we need all the space we could get. So we're going to delete the unnecessary imports, which is really good practice. And we've already downloaded Material UI. Awesome. And we have this React app, so let's just combine them together. So we're going to type import button, as you could probably have guessed, from, and then we're going to let the IntelliSense help us figure out where it's coming from. So we're going to add /button at the end because it doesn't know exactly the direct path we need to go, but hey, we could help it out a little bit if it helps us. So we're going to come in here and create our first button, and it's as simple as this: typing button. We're going to type default in there, and we're going to see that it gives us this almost text looking thing until you hover over it. There's a little bit of a splash there. It's very uninteresting, to be dead honest, but there's a lot more things you could do with these buttons, as well as future customizations for videos down the road. So now that we have this, alright, let's come in here and let's make it a contained button. And so we're going to type variant for the property, and then we're going to give it the value of contained. And what we can see here is that it's popping out of the background, giving a visual that it is indeed like a thing you could click on, whereas before it just looked like really boring text, right? And so we're going to copy and paste this. We're going to come down here below, and so we have the variant there is contained. Now we're going to add some new text to differentiate. And yes, where's my degree? Feel free to copy and paste this and send it to every employer you know. If you get a call back, let me know. I will laugh very hard, especially if it's just based off Material UI buttons. So now we want to add some color. So let's let the IntelliSense figure this out. So we're going to give it the property color, and we want to give it the value of primary here. And we can see that it turns into this violet, bluish, purple kind of color, and that's pretty cool. That's some pretty nice pop, and that is the standard primary color for Material UI. And that doesn't look too bad, right? So let's go ahead here, and there's more than one color you could have. There's actually a secondary color. So let me break this up a little bit here. We're going to type in button. Actually, you know what? Let's just copy and paste this because I don't know what it is about this keyboard I'm using. It just feels weird to type on it. And we do color, and we can see here that secondary is a choice. So let's click on it. And hey, sweet. Okay, so we have to change default there. But hey, it's red, and so now we have contained regular button, but then we could add the color primary and secondary to it, and we have a bit more pop and a bit more differentiation in color, which is great for practicing layouts and prototypes and getting a rough look of how you want your website to look. Never hesitate to use more than one color, right? But there's also the very, very important disabled, because sometimes in your logic you will want an option to be, or a button I should say, to be available, and other times not available. So let's go and rename this up here. Alright, so we have the default, the primary, secondary, and a disabled button here. That's pretty cool. And so these are just some of the things that you could do out of the gate with contained buttons. Once again, they're not complex, and they don't have to be for you to be a good programmer. good developer, web developer, whatever. But there is one more thing that we do need to do, and that is I could show you how to link to another page. And so I'm not going to link, I'm going to give you a dead link, but I'm going to show you the process by which you could do so. And so let's link to an internet scam. Please don't put any scams in the YouTube section below, although that is pretty much an invitation for you to do so, right? So we're going to have the variant contained, we're going to have the color be primary, but then what we're also going to add is the href as a property there, and then we're going to pass it the string value of, let's just, what am I going to type in here? # something. Alright, cool. And when we click on that, we could see up above that it is indeed linking, even though it's not a valid link going anywhere. You could put, whatever place you want your user to go in there, and it should work just fine. And so these are contained buttons. Once again, not very complicated, but why should they be, right? It's a button that you want to look a certain way, style a certain way, and give some moderate functionality to. So in this section, what we're going to end up doing is just making something called text buttons. As you can see, the drop down from above show. It is incredibly easy compared to the contained buttons we just did. It's actually, an argument easier, so to speak. But we could see that we have our buttons. They're working to whatever extent we've made them work on the right side of the screen in the browser here. And so I just want to show you a quick and easy way to make text buttons. And it's as easy as just deleting the variant. So we're going to go through here, is we're going to come in and delete these. Yes, I know there's some shortcut to grab multiple lines at one time. But once again, forgot that for the purposes of this video, because I forget things when it's time for me to record and show it to people. And so as we save this here, what we can end up seeing is that, well, it looks like we don't have that interesting background here, but we do realize that the background is changing. The default is still kind of pasty, but the primary and secondary still have that kind of bluish pop to the back of it here. So if we don't want a full-on coming out of the page contained button look, we could still use a text button here, still get the effect across. Maybe you want to put this in a paragraph tag or something like that, and it could still stand out as something that is selectable to the user, which is pretty nice. As we can see, the disabled here, I don't know if I would use disabled like this amongst other different kinds of text. You'd have to intelligently sort that out here. But as you could see, it's just like the contained buttons we were doing, except it doesn't have that pop background here. But now the text is taking on the primary, secondary color as well as the color of the disabled. Alrighty, so in this section we're going to be doing outline buttons. Now, I just had you delete the variant there, and I'm going to make you type it back on in this time. Got to make you work for it a little bit here. So we can see that the text buttons here, alright, cool, that's awesome. But the issue is what if I want a little bit more pop to the background, but not all the flair that a contained button has? And the answer to that is quite simple. What we could do is type variant in, and we could see, primary there. That's kind of a wrong IntelliSense. But what we could do is actually type outlined. And so we're going to type that on in, as you could see. And let's just copy and paste this and just kind of reveal it all at one time, right? Coming back on in here, we're going to see that indeed that we have like a contained button, but it doesn't have all the filling that a contained button has. And we could see that, hey, that's pretty neat. We even see the outline, the border itself is taking on the color of whether it's disabled or whether or not it's, primary, secondary color. What is also pretty cool is that when you hover over it, it fills the inside of that button, but not quite to the degree that a contained button would. And so this is pretty nice. This is a nice way if you're a bit more of a minimalist, but still want to have a bit of pop and show, and have users be able to easily recognize where your buttons and clicking things generally are. So yeah, this is outline buttons, and that's pretty much it to this. Hey, what's going on? In this section we're going to be talking about the upload button. Upload buttons are important because, well, we want to be able to upload something, right? We want to be able to have our user, maybe we're the user, maybe it's an in-house app that we're building at home for something, and we want to upload a file. So the first thing what we want to do is import make styles. Make styles is incredibly important to know even outside of this tutorial here, because it's a way that you could customize and personalize your material UI elements, and it makes things generally nicer, just above and beyond what the documentation shows you could do with it. You know, when it comes to styling things, there's a whole list of stuff you could do. So beyond just having a button you could click to, I'm going to show you how to do an upload also with an icon button, which is going to be pretty helpful as well. So we're just going to do some copying and pasting, a little bit of editing up there. Alrighty. And so as you could also see between the divs, I cleared everything else out from the previous tutorials because this is a bit more complex of an example. It's not going to warp your brain or mind or anything, at least hopefully it doesn't, but it is more coding. But as you get to the end of it, I hope you could see how all the parts fit together, and it's actually a quite simple pattern. And so as we get into here, what we're going to start off with is a simple, input element there. All right, cool. And this is how I do my, I guess coding you'd say here. Rather than put everything in line and you read it left to right, I'd rather just read top down. It's just easier for me. And so I have accept equals the image there, the ID, and this ID is important, and you could see why in just a second. We're going to give it an ID of file button. Well, we're going to allow multiple meaning more than one file, more than one image. And okay, we have the type file there. And then what we're going to come down here and do is we're going to make, that was the wrong thing there. We're going to make a label, and we're going to want an HTML4. An HTML4 basically means, hey, this label, when you interact with it, it's going to take on the actions and functions on behalf of something else, and that will be file button. So rather than us clicking input, when we click label, it'll act as if it's an input, and so it'll go through the operating system processes for us to upload an image. So now we put a button component in there, upload pictures of your, let's just say, pizza and festivities. Sure, why not? Minor details here. And so, yeah, let's go give this button a variant. Let's make this contained so it pops out a little bit more, and let's give it a color of primary. And this is important too. You need a component to kind of wrap this, and we're going to use a span, and that means that this button is going to be wrapped by a span when you render it on out to the page and you look at the code that is being shown by Edge or Firefox, Chrome, wherever it may be, and you do need that there for this example. So as we can see, we have the input up above, kind of looks ugly, but hey, we at least have the button down below and nothing is breaking so far, so that's pretty cool. But we still have a little bit more work to do here. So remember that make styles up above. We're going to make a constant called uStyles, which is going to take make styles here. And okay, we're going to put the theme in there, and then let's go in and just go fill the rest of this out. And so what we're going to do is we're going to target anything that is an input, and we're going to display it to none. Because what we want is that input to just disappear, because we want the label to work on its behalf. So as you can see, we gave a class name property down below. All right. So now what we're doing inside of the function app is we're bringing in that uStyles constant there. We're renaming it to classes. And what you're going to see now is we're going to be able to access that display none inside of that input element. And so we're going to surround it in the curly brackets, classes.input. And hey, we click it, and then we have all this other stuff come up here. So that's pretty cool. So you can see that that button is working on behalf of that input, and so it just looks better too. And so this is the pattern you're going to want to do if you're doing it with just a plain old button. But what if you don't want to do it with just a plain old button? What if you want to have, say, an icon, which in some cases is a bit better, especially if you're using it maybe on a larger scale application, or the demographics of your users is quite wide. And so what we're going to do is essentially we're going to do the same thing as we're doing above. We're going to have the input. We're going to want to accept an image. We're just going to copy the class name down below because we don't want that input to appear at all. We're going to give it a different ID name. We're going to name it icon. Let's say upload. Sure, that's good enough. We're going to give it a type, file. I guess we're not going to do the multiple. Doesn't matter. And then what we're going to do is we're going to wrap that in a label, as you've already seen. All right, nothing new here. In HTML4, so we could reference that input above, which is icon upload. And so, oh, hey, look, we have an icon button up there. So this is kind of new to us, and this is kind of neat. So we would type it out as we would a regular button, hit enter, separate the two, and let's just go ahead and take that photo camera element and then put it in the middle. But in the icon button, we could still style it as if it's a just regular button component like we have been using. And so we have that primary color, we have the ARIA label for upload picture, and then we also have to have a component to wrap it just like the previous example, and we need that for this to work. And we can see that we click it and it does in fact upload a photo. And these are the two ways that you could do that with Material UI buttons. And yeah, feel free to style them, use different icons, download icons, use these wisely. But before we go, I actually want to show you about that span in here. So as we click on it, we could actually see that yes, in fact, there is a span wrapping around everything that we just did. So yeah, never hesitate to look at the actual code when it renders. Alrighty, so in this section of the tutorial for buttons, at least the basic introduction to them, what we're going to want to look at is how to size a button. Also, how do you put an icon inside of a button, which does differentiate from an icon button, which we just saw. And so what we're going to do is just make some basic buttons right here. We're going to come on in and we're just going to copy and paste them out. Yeah, I know I didn't clear up the use styles above and get rid of the stuff I'm not needing to use, but I think as long as you look between the two divs, you'll be fine for this section of the tutorial. So as we can see, we have three very uninteresting buttons here. That's fine. So let's come in here and let's give them a variant, make them contain so they pop out a little bit more. Because I think that'll show the small, medium, and large. I don't want to say variance, but variance is the right word here when you go ahead and use that property. So we have those up there. Nothing new from the first section of this tutorial. So let's space this out a little bit more. And we're going to come on in and we're going to type size. Now there's small, medium, and large. And sometimes IntelliSense sucks a little bit, but hey, whatever. Just as long as you know, at least from reading the documentation, what your options are. So we're going to type in size equals small, size equals medium, which is the default, and then size equals large here. So we save them, and now we see we have three, different sizes and buttons there. A small, medium, and large. Maybe the larger ones will be something that on your page will be a call to action. Maybe a small would be what the size, I don't know, that you'd want to use if you're on a mobile application, and a large you'd want to scale it up to if they were to open it up on a desktop. I have no clue, but these things are available here for you depending on what your page or business requirements are. So let's give these some colors here. We're going to give the small one primary, the color secondary to the medium one, and I think maybe we'll just leave the large one alone because it's its own color. So alright, that's cool. Thanks, this isn't super interesting. But let's go ahead and see how do we add a icon to the inside of the button, because that's I think the most interesting part here, because you could also have text but also convey meaning with a photo. And so we're going to come in here and we're going to click in start icon or type it in. I'm kind of lazy, so I like my IntelliSense. We're going to have the brackets here, and then we're going to go up and select the photo camera here. We're going to save it. And what happened here? We're bringing in the photo camera. Oh, I think that's what I have to do. There we go. My bad. I'm just used to importing things straight on in. So yeah, you put in your component there, your photo camera, and then you can add it so it says start icon there, and it's that easy. You could add it to the beginning of the application. But if you wanted to, hey, could you add it to the end of the application? You most certainly can. And so if we come in here and delete that on out, we just type in end icon, and we could see that, hey, it renders at the end here. Now if you wanted to make this an upload button as well, you could do that, but this is one way that you can convey extra meanings in your buttons beyond text.